Welcome everyone to Winter Seed Sowing with Laura Beaty and Donna Murphy. We're so glad that our speakers can join us. Laura Beaty is the chair of the propagation committee for the Virginia Native Plant Society, and she manages the native plant beds of the Potowmack Chapter at Green Spring Gardens in Alexandria. Donna Murphy is an Audubon at Home ambassador. She has been a member of the Potowmack Chapter of the Native Plant Society since 2011, and she works on programs, signage, and in the propagation beds. Thank you both, and I will now turn it over to you for your presentations.
Thanks very much for joining us this evening. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties, but we'll have it resolved very shortly.
Do you want to tell our friends here about some of the insects in your recent observations from Meadowwood, which I just read this morning? It was really cool.
Okay, well, those of you who know me know that I'm wild about insects and spiders, and this month's column was about jumping spiders, which even someone who hates spiders should be enchanted by jumping spiders. They're just, I mean, they're so tiny, and yet they face you like they're the same size you are. And I'm, of course, grateful that they aren't the same size that I am, but they've got these 8 eyes and they perform different functions that, you know, our eyes integrate things. Jumping spiders, you know, have different eye pairs do different things, and their tiny little brains manage to integrate the information faster than our brains integrate it. So it's pretty amazing.
I wanted to just do a quick background of how long people have been working on seeds right here in the United States. And this was the first message that we had on this kind of thing was from the Native Plant Trust way back in 1900. It ultimately, at the very bottom, they are now the New England Wildflower Society. But their definition here is that a seed is a living organism dependent on its stored energy reserves for survival until it begins to photosynthesize for itself. Once the seed is removed from the parent, it begins the race against death. It either germinates successfully and begins to photosynthesize on its own, or it fails to germinate before it uses up its stored reserves and therefore dies. The more energy reserve and the slower it uses it, the better off it is, and it will germinate and grow. This has ramifications for both collection, the way you collect them, and the storage. Now in charge of this, as everyone knows, Bill Kalina. So it's always a pleasure to mention his name whenever I can. We start at the beginning. Seeds, of course, have to start somewhere, and it's a tango in the spring between the ephemerals that come out and the early pollinators, most of them solitary bees. On this one, I have a neighbor up the street that has a hive. So on this picture, I've got a little honeybee here. Now, in the winter, you see this bright white, especially in a forest, because everything is brown. And what is important is the advertisement. So the plant is advertising it's open for business by that white. They see that. Has nothing to do with the ability of the plant to make seeds. But it draws them in and it provides pollen. Because first of all, the original, the beginning of all the bees that are emerging is that they need to get the protein. They need to get started on laying eggs. So here it is, the bloodroot. And what every plant always hates is not to have a good distribution system to get the seeds away from the parent plant. And this includes trees. Get them away, have the squirrels carry them, have the little airplanes carry them to another county. So that's also a battle that the plants are always dealing with. So here we go. We've got a bee that's pollinating, and that's one of the spring ephemerals. And also we have the everyone knows the beautiful spring beauty. All these early spring ephemerals are all generally the seeds are carried away by ants. So this is a big industry they've got going. The ants take care of moving the seeds around, which does get them away from the parent. The pollinator here is a solitary bee, which is, again, it's a reward system. This plant has the lines on it that says, follow the lines down to the nectary and you will get your nectar. On the way down, their body gets caught up with all the anthers and gets pollen all over them, which they want also. But that then is carried to the next plant, and thus we have a chance to have seeds. Again, this is a bumblebee, really an extraordinary long-tongued pollinator, and it is pollinating the beautiful Virginia bluebells. Would you put that down? Now, the ant distribution system, they have to have a reason to carry that seed away all the way up the hill into their, and the way they do it is they put an enticement on it. And here's the elaiosome that's wrapped around that seed, a real enticement for ants to carry it off and carry it home. They eat that's filled with proteins and carbohydrates and lipids and all these great things they want. Once they get through with that, as the ants again go back to their homes, they drop that seed into the pile of beautiful friable soil that they have prepared, and it's discarded. And yet, then you start getting colonies all over your yard. So the ants are the distribution system to get the seeds moved away from the parents. And we all know what happens in the early spring in April. The hummingbirds come up, and just in time, timing over many millions of years, I'm sure, the Aquilegia, the columbine, is there, and this is one that is a specialist for the hummingbirds. Now, you know, a lot of other bees have figured out a way to go into nectaries and steal nectar, but this is a plant that we always expect to see the hummingbirds come to. The way some plants work their magic, they lure in. Of course, purple is a great color for so many of the pollinators. This is a leafcutter bee. The next picture has a bumblebee, but this one illustrates how that it lures it in, and as soon as it steps on the bottom petals, they separate. And what is showing here is a little arm comes up and taps them with pollen on their abdomen. So then they go to the next plant. Not only do they share that pollen, but they get additional pollen. So they keep moving it around. And if you want to know the most efficient pollinator, it's the bumblebee. They're very good. Okay, this is that same plant, the Baptisia. So I wanted to get into some of the seeds here. Separate seed from pod for cleaning and let them dry. And what I mean clean them, I just mean get away the debris that's around them, separate them out. Most seeds need a cold period, which is winter, for their germination. Seeds know what they're doing. If we want to regulate and try to grow them, we need to do what nature does. So simple enough, watch what nature does and you can do it. Alternatively, a seed that falls onto the ground, as they would normally do, will split open and the seeds are then moved around by weather, by animals or whatever. But in this case, this one was not able to get out of its little pod when it started to germinate, and Donna's going to enlarge that picture for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So you can see. Okay, so now you can see there is a.
You want the pointer won't actually.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So there it is. The root. First thing that happens is the root goes down, and as soon as it goes down, it sends up to the cotyledon, the beginning leaves. That's the first job they do, is start to photosynthesize, giving the root more energy to get going, and then the true leaves come up. In this case, it got a little stunted because it got caught in the pod and wasn't freed. Mm-hmm. And there's a second one that was doing that. Can I move on, or do you need to introduce it? Okay.
Oh,
you need to put it back. Okay. Okay. Here's another plant. Now as I go through these, what I'm illustrating without saying it, so I'll say it now, is that there's a whole season of seed collecting. You have to wait several months in some cases or something like that in order to collect seed. But plants are constantly blooming throughout the season. And so you keep track of where they are and which seeds you want, so you'll know where to go back and find them. This is Halictid bee on the threadleaf coreopsis, and this would be a June flowering plant, which is, may go for 6 weeks or so. And the beautiful cardinal flower, which is also very attractive to hummingbirds, but the bumblebees have found a way to work it. The little arms that you see on the outside coming up, the little gray, that is what hits the back And you'll see it in another on another plant. When they step on the petals down below, that arm touches them on the back. That's how that pollen is spread. So in order for this plant to make seed, it's reliant on that pollinator to go and carry the pollen from one plant to the other.
Is that a bumblebee right
And that's a bumblebee
Oh, cool.
right in the center.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is early June, July into August. Seed collection we've just done seed collection on that. And here it is, was October yesterday, but this is, not only do I want to make sure you understand that all pollinators don't look like just bees. The wasps are very, very good pollinators. And this is on the mint. And this is a July blooming, and it just now had the very last blossoms on it. So it's a long blooming plant, and you have a myriad of various pollinators that land on it. The trumpet vine, which is a large trumpet flower, is there's the hummingbird down there at the bottom. This is one that they really can go into, and it attracts a lot of insects inside of they go in there looking around for things too. So when that hummingbird goes in, not only does it get the pollen and get the nectar, it also gets a lot of insects, so it gets protein too. And this is July and August, and it's getting close to forming pods now, so seeds will be developing. This is the horse mint, and it's really, Monarda punctata is really a beautiful, beautiful plant, all kinds of coloring on it and spots and everything. This is a carpenter bee, and they would also do the same sort of deal. They step on a lever, and you can see it right now, at the top of her head is getting hit with pollen. So the next one she's going to go to is the one that's wide open there. And there she goes, she gets hit again. Okay, there are two separate flowers on this plant. Well, there's a lot of flowers, but that one has got pollen from one plant to the other, and then new pollen to go on and on. So this is our seed production going on right here.
Okay.
The mining bee on Bumstead, and this is a Eupatorium foliatum, and this is an August blooming plant. So, more and more as you get toward the end of the season, there's more and more a fever by the pollinators to get their job done. They have one season, and they need to keep laying their eggs and collecting pollen and nectar.
Let's see.
Something funny with that. Oh, here we go. Purple. Oh boy, every insect loves purple. I love purple. This is a mist flower with the bumblebee in September. And this is just, get your eyes full of this great color, more of the mist flower. And this is really, really attracted to all the insects. They all love it. And so do monarchs. If they have a choice, they pick this blue mist flower. It's just so beautiful. Here's another pretty purple flower. Now this shows you the arm right here, and this is the blue lobelia. You saw the cardinal flower, and this is the blue version, Lobelia syphilitica, and it is touching the back of that bee, and it would go next to the next flower, and the same thing happens. More pollen is put on the back. Just for information, what's marked down below shows that it has been pollinated. It's done, and it wrinkles up to show the bee that she needs to go to the next flower and not stay with that. Here's a thread-waisted wasp on the flat-top goldenrod. It's September now. It's getting to be a little feverish now because we're getting close to the end of the season, and there's a lot of flowers blooming. Butterflies, same deal. They are all out doing what they need to do at the end, and this is the buckeye. And there's 3 buckeyes on the flat-top goldenrod again. The flowers signal to pollinators so they don't waste their time and get right to the job is to put a pink center in when they no longer have any nectar or offer pollen on that plant. And here is a very, very smart little bumblebee that knows that, and she's working on the yellow flower, which still has pollen. So they're all very efficient. They don't have time. They want to just get right to business, do what they have to do. Again, it's a wild time at the end of the season, because this is the last best time for the plants to get pollinated and produce their next generation in seed, and for the pollinators to also gear up their energy level to lay their eggs and do what they have to do before they pass on. Again, beautiful goldenrods into season. This is October, and I have some that are still blooming right now. So this is really, it's getting really toward the end. And sometimes I see the bumblebees giving up and hiding under leaves and going to sleep in the afternoon when it's really cold. When the sun comes back out, they also come back out. But again, that's getting at the end of their season. Now they get a bad rap, goldenrod does, when people say, yeah, there it is again, I'm going to have horrible hay fever and asthma and all that. Well, this is the villain, but they don't understand it because they don't even see it. This is blind to everybody. It's just a green plant. No, it's loaded with buds all up and down the terminals, and they're loaded with pollen that is windborne. This is a prehistoric plant that relies on the wind for pollination. So this is what your ragweed, what most people are having problems with, but they blame the thing they see that's pretty, and that's the goldenrod. But this is has wildlife value in that it has fat and protein in it that is used by insects. Okay, this is what I wanted to sort of demonstrate. There's plants growing throughout the season. This comes from our local chapter's
Plant Novenatus.
Yeah, Plant Novenatus book on the Northern Virginia area. But all these things are blooming, so you have opportunities to wait for seeds to mature and pull them out throughout the season. Seed collecting protocol, and this is sort of an ethics thing. There is no wild collecting without permission. I can boil it down to the best thing is that form clubs, go to native plant societies, circles, the Audubon groups, and try to swap seeds out. It's best not to do anything without permission of the person who owns the property, and don't go onto county property or parks or whatever. Even though you're just taking a few, those few seeds can make a difference. So go to where neighbors have a lot of something, and like me, I've got tons of seeds. So it's best to do that, but I understand that protocol that you just can't walk on someone's property or onto county, or even the Department of Transportation on the side roads where they have all these plants growing. It's even discouraged. So Donna will give you some more information on that. This is a little finch, and this is on a New England aster, and they're very busy this time of year. And I've noticed there's a lot of seeds they're pulling, but they're also dropping on the ground. But the point is that if a finch can collect seeds, well, you can too. Look how happy she is. Cleaning is a critical part, and you should do it as soon as you collect the seed, depending on the type of seed it is. Always carry brown paper bags with you, because you don't want to put any seed, and this is just, I'll say it once and I won't keep repeating it. Do not use plastic. Do not put anything in plastic bags. Seeds are alive. They breathe and they need air. So putting anything in a plastic bag is sort of the death of the seed. So no plastic. Seeds from the heads, the pods, the capsules can be air dried in the paper bags, and then you can shake it out and then just separate. I've been doing this for a week now. Just separate them out on a sheet of paper so you can see them, and separate out the seed from the shaft and all this, spent leaves and things, and then just put them in another smaller brown bag and label everything. Always label everything. If you don't, you're going to have a problem. So keep things labeled. Again, no plastic. And let's see, they know how, okay. They know seeds. Seeds are very smart. They're a lot smarter than I am. So you don't have to jump through a lot of hoops. nature knows what it's doing. Follow nature. They know, seed knows how much cold period it needs, and it activates on that through chemical reactions. They need warm, they know the number of warm days they need. They know how much rain they need in order to stimulate germination. We need to follow nature's cues. We need to be as smart as a seed. If you do that, growing seeds is easy. These are honeysuckle seeds, and they're happening right now, the end of the season. Honeysuckle, again, is sempervirens, it's evergreen, and as long as the days are warm, flowers keep coming. So these seeds are processed either by birds through their gut, and then seeds are dropped, or by volunteers. I was the volunteer here, so I cleaned these seeds and got all the pulp off of them. Pulp basically is an inhibitor. The seed will not germinate if it's got pulp on it. So you know that seeds always, when they come out of birds, they've been cleaned. When they come out of fox, when they come out of raccoons, they've all been cleaned. So that's what needs to happen. These seeds depend on going through the acid treatment given to them by the animal that has eaten them. I didn't eat them, but I did clean them very carefully. And then I would keep them. Once they dried out, I put them in a brown bag. I don't refrigerate anything, because I will get my seed trays out by into Christmas and January, and they will then start their cold period outside. Now, who are you? These seeds, this will happen to you. I'm telling you, mark down on your envelopes who you've put in there, because in some cases you're going to go, oh my gosh, I forgot to write it down. What is it? Well, you can grow them out anyway, and eventually you'll know what they are. But always try to remember to keep track of the seeds, the date, where it's come from, so you'll have some knowledge when you're working with them. And be sure to look at your seeds. Don't try planting something that has holes in it. I've lined them up with the good and the bad, but then there's another little sneaky weevil that got in there. So your red buds, toss out the ones that are no good. Don't waste your time. So those are big ones to work with, which is easier to check on. And don't go making work for yourself if you're already growing out seedlings you haven't noticed. Here's the wild bleeding heart, and I actually did save those and plant them, but they love good drainage. So remember, we're always going to be working to get good drainage. And here the seedlings are coming right up, and they love the conditions. So remember, seeds like gravel and sand and good drainage. When we get our trays ready, we put in leaves at the bottom so that we can ensure that there's good drainage at the bottom. You can also use that core, which is that coconut matting, which is thick and fibrous, but it drains very well. Drainage is critical for seeds. They do not want to sit in a swamp. They will not thrive. The roots will not thrive. So drainage is really critical in getting seeds to survive. Okay, so the leaves work fine. The core matting works fine also. You can even just fill it up with gravel if you wanted to do that. But again, you would lose soil that way. So you need things that will keep the soil in the pot. I would just want to go run through real quick. There's becoming a new trend in there. Well, there are soilless mixes that have been standard in the industry for years because they're lightweight. They're easy to put together. The ones that are the popular ones that are on the market now, they've got perlite, which is a mined mineral, expands for heat and it enhances soil drainage. Vermiculite is also mined and heated. Looks like mica, if you've seen the sparkling mica. And this absorbs water and does offer some nutrients. Peat moss, which is also in its own way mined from ancient peat bogs, but which are also carbon sinks in Great Britain and Canada. Turns out England and Wales will soon ban further extractions of the peat. And most of the peat moss, sphagnum peat, we get in the United States comes from Canada now. These are extractive industries versus the possibility of the renewable industries, alternative ingredients. So there's sharp sand, which is a builder's sand, so it's got edges on it. It's not like sandbox sand. And this substitutes for perlite. It provides drainage. Pine fines, which is a finely ground pine bark, which is water retentive. and allows water to be around the roots, but not too much. The problem there, of course, is that there's a lot of people that complain about the forests, the southern forests that keep getting, they raise it. It's an industry there, raise the pines, slash them down. But see, in the meantime, there's a lot of birds that are displaced by that whole process. So that I see that as an extractive thing also. Core is the finished product of the ground coconut husk, which is highly renewable resource and does absorb water. And another thing I use is composted wood chips and composted leaves that both add nutrients and moisture retention. So I think, and there's this new company called Organic Mechanics, which is beginning of a new renewable soil industry. And it is carried by Whole Foods. And I visit the one at DePaul's in Vienna, nursery there. Here we are in production. Now, what you have to know is that anything outside is open season. Unless you have a secure site, plan on visits from your local rodents. They're very, very clever, and they love seeds, especially hunting for them, like tearing the pots open. They really are good at that. So always protect your trays. The ones on the bottom that don't look protected actually have wire mesh that is put around them and tightened. It's just not put on at the moment. But I've got, everything has to be covered if you want to save it. Here's our trays that are started to germinate, and this was, we took the wire covers off. I took it off for the photo, but this is at our propagation beds, and we have trays and trays of seedlings, and really, we don't do anything. We set them up for the season, we put the mesh on them, and we walk away and come back in the spring and hope everything. Sadly, a lot of weed seeds drop in the mesh, and we pull those out, but it's very effective. We really don't do that much work on that. Okay, here are some seeds that have germinated, and this is New York ironweed. Now, the fun part about this is that the first thing, again, a seed does is send down the root. And then what the root does is then allow the cotyledons, which is part of the seed itself, come up, and Donna's pointing out the two leaves. Those are the cotyledons. The ones that are real easy to spot there. The next set of leaves that come up are called the true leaves. And in this set, we have, some of these have actually their second set of true leaves. This is the time when you see this, when they've got the true leaves on them, is a good time to start separating seedlings. It's good because the plant is still small, the roots are not intertwined. Now, if you wait a little while, you can make work a little bit harder for yourselves because the roots will tangle. Not that it's not savable. It is totally savable. It's just more work. So try to, when you're growing these things, watch for the cotyledons to come out and then wait for that first set of true leaves and maybe even the second set of true leaves. Here's some of our pots, and we do use some of the plastic recycled pots. And they're good for 2 or 3 seasons, and they start to break down. But they do usually come with the produce in them whenever, so they already have really nice openings in them. You really want to make sure there is good drainage in your pots. If the pots are sitting in water, it's a lost cause. Drainage is very, very important. Here's the cardinal flower. Now, oftentimes, if you're growing the cardinal flower and the blue lobelia, they look quite the same. But to point out some of the red spots. Some of the red spots there will show you that this is the cardinal flower, and look for that. They often have it on them, so it's pretty easy. But again, if you have this little label here, you know the date and you know which one it is. Here's some more of our trays. Just wanted to point out our button bush that did very well. It's an easy plant to germinate. It just jumps right out of the ground. It's beautiful. And the benefit of that is that we had plenty to sell during this year for our wildflower of the year, which is the butterfly. The button bush, really gorgeous plant. And these love to be in an area that has moisture. So a ditch is a great place for them, a place that's kind of low and carries water, like rain gardens and things. These are wonderful. And if you've never seen them before, Huntley Meadows Park in Alexandria, they've got stunning plants there. okay, I have to do this. It's that time of year. Leave the leaves, folks. Leave the leaves. Too many insects and all kinds of larvae are under those leaves. Besides that, the leaves do break down. And when they do break down, that's food for some of the caterpillars that are coming around. This is food. And then once it breaks down again, it becomes part of the soil, which enriches the soil that the leaves took away to make the leaves. So always save the leaves wherever you can. It's really a good policy. And also leave the dead stalk standing. For at least 3 reasons. One is that our solitary bees rely on these stems, these hollow stems, to lay their eggs in. They bore in little holes and they lay their eggs in that. Some larger stalks, some smaller stalks. But also leaving the stalks up during the winter provides and I could have put in too many more pictures, but what it does, though, it does provide shelter for the birds. Lots of winter birds go underneath all of these stalks where seeds have fallen, and they rummage around there all the time, but they are protected. There is no overhead hawk that can find them because they're in all these stalks. So that's a great way to do it. But if you haven't noticed, there is a chrysalis hanging there. And sometimes people don't look at what they knock down. It's because it's the end of the season, take the stalks down. Do not take the stalks down. Wait till, almost going into April. And you'd be sure by that time that the solitary bees have emerged and that they are out there rummaging around again. I think that's okay. Donna will now take over with the grasses.
All right. Deer tongue grass, or Dicanthelium clandestinum, like other flowering grasses. Okay, here we go. Like other flowering plants, grasses have flowers which form on what will develop into the seed head. Botanists call it the inflorescence. Grasses are wind pollinated, but their tiny flowers have pollen and other structures similar to other herbaceous plants. And here's a diagram of grass seed, and you can see right in the center there, the ovary is what develops into the seed. This diagram is courtesy of Marion Lobstein, former professor at Northern Virginia Community College. Now here's the deer tongue grass in bloom now. The small red structures that look like tiny pearls are actually anthers. Now, I mean, tiny petals are actually anthers, which are part of the floret. You can see that the stamens are starting to droop and to be shed. The little green ovals are the unripe seeds developing from the ovary. Can you see the yellow crab spider? There's a little crab spider. And there's a better view of those little red anthers. And then the little green things here that are the ovary swelling and developing into the seed. I just had to include this deer tongue. I saw this years ago, a different spider with a tiny egg sac folded into a leaf with spider silk. And the mother stays with her the whole time that egg sac is developing to protect the eggs. Little blue stem, I wish I could pronounce it, Schizocurium scoparium. And this photo is by Gary Fleming, who a lot of his photos are in the digital atlas. And I wanted to use this one. And he had told me in the past that if I wanted to use them, that they weren't on the digital atlas, the formatting wasn't very high resolution. If I wanted to use one, I should ask him by email. He gave me his email address. So I asked him for this one, and this is such a beautiful high resolution photo of the little blue stem. Unlike deer tongue, which has smooth round seeds, little blue stem seeds look like insects, as do seeds of other grasses, such as broom sedge and Indian grass. And here's a blow up, an enlargement of the little the seed, and they even behave something like insects. Grass seeds may still be attached to the dried florets, which often sport a hair-like awn, and that's the awn, A-W-N. And then when you touch any part of the seed, sometimes the seeds appear to spring away on their own power. Purple top. This is purple top or Tridens flavus. Plants contain oil and use it for food and energy. They store it particularly in their seeds, which use this high energy food during germination. In the field, a simple identification characteristic of purple top is the oily feel of the inflorescence where the seeds are formed inside the florets. In this photo, the seeds are probably not ripe for collecting. They probably get more dried out and browner when the time approaches. Purple lovegrass, Eragrostis spectabilis, also known as tumblegrass, for the way the whole seed head detaches and gets blown around in the wind to disperse the seeds. So here is an enlargement of that large inflorescence. There are spikelets. These are spikelets from the seed head of purple lovegrass. They look a little like wheat, which is a grass. Each spikelet appears to have 5 florets, which look like kernels where the seed will develop. Last year, when I was separating out the seeds, I discovered something interesting. These minuscule seeds, when separated from the dried florets, are smooth, rounded, and chestnut or dark amber in color. However, when magnified with a lens, an eyepiece, 10x is good, and is observed in the right light, they look like natural and translucent amber beads. And I'm going to show you a close-up of that. And the way I discovered that they were translucent is looking at them magnified, and you can see the light coming through. I just think that's such a great photograph. And the credit here is not easy to see, I'm afraid. It got separated, but Tony Jenberg is the photographer, and she just did a beautiful job showing those. And I was so excited because it was so hard to, get them to where I could share that with someone. This is cardinal flower, Lobelia cardinalis, that Laura talked about. It's best to separate or clean seeds, like she said, by collecting them gently in the first place, by tapping lightly and not stripping the seed head. You can avoid a lot of chaff that way. You can see the opened capsule right there, and you can see it even better there. It almost looks like a little bird's mouth opening. The seeds just spill out from there. Luckily, they usually face upward and don't spill out until you turn them down. So that's good. This is St. Andrew's cross, and the seed capsules are quite hard. They can be gently broken open, but I found out this year at peak ripeness time, the capsules will open naturally and the seeds will spill out. So the seeds come out of the capsules clean. Let's see, other species of seeds can get mixed up with the chaff. Some chaff can be blown away, but you risk blowing away some of the seed as well. Using a sieve works, but only if the bits of chaff and seed are different enough in size. So here's a little bit bigger one and bigger enlargement. And here's the opening of the little capsule. Last year, I had harvested them a little too early, and I was kind of having to grind them up with a mortar and pestle. And this year, they just happened to spill out on their own. And finally, I'd like to say that seeds are distinctive and hard. No matter how small, you can almost always feel the tiniest seeds with your fingertips. Oh, and when I process seeds, I keep a small container nearby to catch the tiny insects and spiders that crawl out of the litter, so I can return them outside to the habitat they came from. So I just wanted to say this about sourcing seed. Local seed is best if you're into natives. All properties, private or public, require permission to collect seed, even utility right-of-ways. According to Matt Wright of Earth Sangha, he says, my go-to advice for hobbyists is not to collect from wild populations at all. The sum total impact may be negative, as it interferes with seed banking on site, puts populations at risk of overcollection, and removes food sources for wildlife. Germination rates may be lower too, as hobbyists learn their own techniques. Of course, a different beast entirely when growing from your own plants in your garden, which I heartily endorse. So we advise a network with VNPS or Autumn at Home members, and just know your source.
I do have a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
Debbie asks, can we cut some of the dead stalks and move those into a mulch pile of sticks and leave them in another part of the yard?
You know what I do is I cut some and I put them in kind of a vase with it or a tall pot outside so that they could be upright. And you can drop them down to the ground, but when that happens, they start decomposing. So for the usefulness of insects, it's really better for them to be upright. But you can collect them and all and put them in a section. You can also get, the wire wrap I put around anything I grow, like trees and shrubs, and that keeps the deer off. But you can do those, secure them to the ground, and then put sticks in those. That keeps them all in a cage. Yeah. That keeps them all together. It keeps them upright, and it's perfectly fine. The insects who want them will find them.
Thank you. Jill asks, if you have lobelias that have self-seeded and then get covered by fall leaves, do you need to take off the fall leaves in the spring? I've heard that the basil rosette needs to be in the light. It does.
It's about too much moisture too on it, and the plant won't survive that. Yeah, just lightly get the leaves away, put them in another location. If you know you've got some seedlings coming up underneath them, it's a good idea to give them air and light.
And Tony puts in a comment that Heather Holm recommends in the spring to cut back dead flower stalks, leaving stem stubble of varying height, 8 to 24 inches, to provide nest cavities. So yeah, stems should be kept through spring to provide the most benefits. Embrace the dead stalks.
Yeah, no, she's absolutely right. I do the same thing. I just do it differently. I keep things up as long as I can, and then I do cage things down, depending on the number of them and the size. And I actually have cinder blocks and put them on their side and put the sticks through them. And I find that not only is that useful, and for some reason I managed to put them in a place where the afternoon light hits them and they look like chihuly glass, but also birds love to sit on top of them and watch things. So it gives them some elevation where they can watch. It gives the insects something. It keeps them all together, and it gives me an art display. And I didn't even plan that. That was luck.
That sounds fascinating. Carla asks, what kind of screening or netting do you use to protect your outdoor pots? How do you keep them on?
We fold them over and sort of bend them at the corners so they can't get out. And a rodent cannot get them out.
It's screening.
We can hardly get them out.
Or hardware cloth.
Yeah, the hardware cloth.
Yeah.
And we fold it over the sides of the trays and then pinch it together in the corners so it doesn't come off. You do wear gloves when you do this, or you'll be wearing band-aids.
Jenny asks, what soil do you use for seeds?
I make my own, and it was based on the last selection that I mentioned. So I do have a lot of my local soil when I had a pathway put in, and they had to go down 12 inches, 6 feet wide for quite a distance. So I still have a lot of that soil, and it's very, very good soil. So I mix some of that, but I also use composted leaves, composted wood. I throw in some sand. I get from Lowe's, they've got a nice compost manure mix that feels good. It seems to work good. I just do a whole combination of things, and then I just keep making them. I put them in metal trash cans and keep them ready for when I have them. So there are some days when I do nothing but make soil, and there's other days that I do anything but make soil. So when I feel in the mood, I get it done, so I have it ready for it.
That sounds like a very good way.
It's very industrious, yeah.
Mention the organic mechanics again.
Oh yeah, and again, if you want to get a non-extractive seed mix, organic mechanics, I think they are actually part of a consortium now, so you can actually order and have it delivered. But there are supposedly Maryfield is supposed to have it, but I've never seen it there. But they do have it at DePaul's, and Whole Foods carries a number of their various, for potting soil, for seeding, for whatever. They carry that every spring, and they have it piled outside. And the prices maybe, depending on what you're getting and how large a sack, from $9 to $16. But it's excellent. It's just excellent. And it can, and I have, you can use that for more than 1 year. So it's very economical too. And it saves you from having to doing all the mixing.
I ordered it online from eBay.
Oh, and Donna's ordered it from eBay online. So.
Well, thanks. Meg asks, where do you buy seeds for native Nova plants?
Where do we buy seeds? We grow our seeds at our propagation beds where we have outside Green Spring Gardens.
But how can an individual buy seeds? Is there any way for an individual?
Well, there was a time when we had the industry and the personnel enough to start packaging these things up. And I think we'll probably start doing that again, because I'm processing the seeds we've collected thus far, and we have more seeds than we need. So we can make seeds available. We don't necessarily need to sell them. At some point, I have on my listing, and I will put them on a sheet and have that distributed to our members. And you're welcome to them for extra seeds. You don't need many, because they're a big responsibility when they start growing. But we have plenty of seeds in our propagation beds, because that's what we do. We grow seeds, we grow plants, and then we collect them. And many there are now will just go into the ground, or the birds will eat them. So if someone wants to get a hold of us and go with us, we'll go over there with them and collect seeds with them, or I can just give them some seeds I've got.
Right. If I may say, we meant to put our email address on the very last slide so that you would have that, and somehow it didn't come through. So
it's okay. I put it in the chat for them.
Great. Okay.
I'll put it in again.
Okay. Thank you. And we both have seeds, and can help you out there.
And if you belong to your chapter of the Virginia Native Plant Society, you will probably hear about this too. So here's a plug for that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, there's a question about soil. Of the materials you mentioned, what proportions might you use of each?
I use an even amount of each. I'm eyeballing it. A couple of handfuls, mix it together. I need 2 more handfuls of each one. But proportionally, I kind of use the same amount for each one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any suggestions for direct sowing in the fall or winter?
What I do is I'm cleaning mine now, and I have them in envelopes. I've got them marked. What I will do is get seed trays ready, around Christmas when there's nothing else to do. Get trays ready. And then by mid-January, I will sow the seeds, and I will get them ready and put them outside. And then they will start their process of the cold stratification they need to finish the development of the endosperm of the seed. They need that cold period. And I will again take care to make sure that no animals get into them. We'll watch them. And then by, depending on the seed itself, but by March and April, sometimes things start happening. And it's amazing, because it's like, there's one. In the next couple of days, there's 5, there's 10, the whole tray's green. So, and they're not all going to be the same. They're all going to, each individual seed is going to come when it's ready. But you just keep at it and keep protecting them. And in some cases, it won't be until, June or July, you see things. We have someone who brings in pawpaw seeds. It cleans them, and we put them in trays. And this year, they just were slower than usual. And he was so discouraged. And then I said, no, they're fine. I've checked them. They're fine. They're just not ready yet. It was a weird kind of spring we had earlier this year. And sure enough, one day he came in and I said, go look at it. And they're all coming up, So don't think you have to throw anything out. In their own good time, depending on the location, the amount of moisture they get, the amount of heat, if you have shade area, whatever, everything's going to be slightly different for every seed and every tray. But I wouldn't give up on them. Along around the following November, I would probably say toss it.
Yeah. Did you ask about sowing directly into the soil on the ground? Is that what?
No,
yes.
you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that, sister. You don't have any control if you do that. No, it's better to get them into a tray.
Right.
Yeah, because you have to know that site has excellent drainage, and yada yada yada. If it doesn't have that, it's well, I mean, if you have extra seeds, throw them out. That's fine. The birds will eat them, though. I got to tell you that.
So you'd want to rough up the soil, though.
You would have to do that, and then I actually would put something over them, something to keep the rodents from coming in, because they love seeds. They just love them. Right. The smaller the rodent, the more they like them.
Thanks. Kelly says she may be in the minority here, but she could sure use a native plants of Nova 101 and resources for acquiring them other than the biannual plant sale.
How to
in the book? I'm not sure what the question is.
Yes, the question again. Yeah.
It would be nice to have a guide that was a native plants of Nova 101. And I think the Plant Nova Natives book might possibly be part of the answer. I'm not sure.
Well, you can access that online. There's no cost, and download any pages you want. But it is pretty good. It's a pretty good document, and they just reworked it so it's brand new. It's got more plants in it, but it also gives you cultural information about growing things. So that really works good. We have a lot of people that are more and more coming to our beds to volunteer on Wednesdays, and they learn how to pot things. They learn how to identify things, and a lot of them have gotten very good just by volunteering and just having access to it and listening to everybody talk and compare notes and guessing at what something is. So volunteering is also a really good way, even if you don't know anything. That's when you want to do this kind of thing, because then you learn a lot faster than just doing it on your own.
Should they contact you, or can they just show up, or what?
They should contact me, so I give them the information about when we're there. And we work from April through October.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Meg asks, where can one buy Nova native plant seeds? And you've mentioned the free ones, but
yeah, no, there is no Nova native plant seeds. There isn't any. No, what they're trying to say is that try to grow seeds that are native to Northern Virginia. And that would be the plants that would typically be here based on, weather, geology, history, whatever, the rise of the tide, the length of the view from the mountains, the Piedmont, the whatever. It depends on each plant community is so different. We have so many here. We are probably the richest floral community in the whole East Coast. The area with the rivers, it's just an amazing area. So we have a lot of different plant communities based on how much moisture it is, what kind of minerals are in the soil. So it's a very rich area. So it would be very large. But I think that the going online and looking at Plant Nova Natives for the Potowmack chapter is really a good way to get started. There's a lot of information in there.
And we sell the books at our beds at Green Spring Gardens, and we're there on Wednesdays. Every Wednesday.
Starting in April.
Right, starting in April. And we have a sale the first Wednesday of each month. So those guides would be available when people come to shop.
And again, they're $5, but you can download it for free.
Right. Or, yeah.
Okay. I think this is Libby is asking, when can we harvest milkweed seeds and how should we treat them?
Do it now, because you notice they have little things that make them fly away, right? And they will fly away. And that's how that parent kicks the kids out of the area so they won't interrupt her personal life there when she's had her kids. What you try to do is you open up, hold the fluff part, and then just pull the seeds free. You can let the fluff go and put the seeds in an envelope and mark it, what it is, the date, and get it down. So, but they're easy. It's easier to do if you get the pod.
What if the pod is still green? Do we have to wait till the pod is?
Wait till it starts to open itself.
Okay.
Always wait till something is opening.
Thank
if
you.
something is green, always wait till it turns brown. That's pretty good rule of thumb with berries too. With a berry, wait till the berry turns dark before you pull it, and wait for seeds to turn brown before you pull them. If they're green, let them go yellow, then they'll go tan. They get brown, and then they get black. But somewhere in there, at the end of it, where it's brown or black, is where the seeds are viable.
Now, I've heard that it's hard to germinate. People have had trouble germinating the milkweeds, even common milkweed. Have you had that problem, Laura?
I have so many in my yard, I don't have to grow.
Okay.
No, but we do have seeds and we will be growing them. But they are a little trickier than some for some reason, while the swamp milkweeds come right out and the butterfly weeds come out reliably, germinate quickly. But you're right with but with once they get in, they travel underground and they'll cover your entire yard. So once they're in, once your common milkweed is in, it's there for life.
Okay, Glenn asks, how long do the small seedlings need once they're separated to be ready for planting, and how big does a plant need to be before it can be put in a natural setting?
Again, once you get them out of the seedling tray, and this is after they've got their true leaves on them, put them in a small pot, of course bigger than what they're in, and let them go for a couple of weeks. See how they're doing. Watch them. Keep them watered. Keep the birds and the rodents away from them. And once they look strong, and you'll know it, they'll show it. They'll be ready to go out. But I would say they would probably from the tray to the pot where they are the only thing in that pot, so their roots can really develop. You probably got maybe 4 or 5, 6 weeks before you want to move it out. And it will depend on the confidence you have looking at it.
Okay. I think you may have covered this, but I'm going to ask anyway. Lori asked, will you discuss methods for direct to the ground fall winter sowing? But I think you already addressed that.
Yeah, there's people that have probably much better yards than I do for that kind of thing. My yard will grow anything, but it's not a good place for me to put seeds. It's just, it doesn't have enough good drainage in enough areas to do that. So I would suggest that you stick with the trays, go with the pots, and then insert them where you think it is the right spot for them, depending on if it's a shade-loving plant or a sun-loving plant, or one that likes to be in a moist area, or one that wants to be in a very dry area that has excellent drainage. And you will know that typically by what is growing in certain areas of your yard, and then look up the plant. And when you find out its cultural information, you'll go, oh, so this is a dry area because this one is doing very well there. You pick this stuff up. It just starts going into your brain once you start doing it, and it all starts to make sense.
Can I make something? Now, this is kind of the opposite of what you said, because I have very seldom put some directly in the ground, and one of them was purple love grass, and it was some seed that Tony Jenberg gave me. And I thought, I'm just going to try this in the ground here. And I had a bare spot. And so I put some in. And then when I came back in the spring, I saw this little grass coming up. And I thought, oh, my gosh, I was going to pull it out because I thought it was the turf growing into my bed, see. And I weed the grass out. Most people weed the weeds, but I weed out the grass. So I was going to pull it out. And I thought, this is pretty close to where I put that purple love grass. And so I got down really close and looked, and I could see these little horizontal short hairs coming up out of the shaft. And I thought, my turf grass doesn't have that kind of hair. And so I left it. And sure enough, that it was the purple love grass. So, it did.
Yeah,
it was fun.
You gotta know your property.
Right.
It really works. Yeah.
I think you may have addressed this also, but do you leave the pots uncovered over the winter?
No.
Oh no, never. No, I mean there's always mesh on them. They need what nature would normally do if I wasn't there. The seed would go in the ground. It would be watered. And there's a loss. There's definitely a loss. The rodents will pick up a lot of it. And I'm sure the plant never intended for everything to be viable in there and succeed anyway. But if you're growing them to sell, you kind of want to, get your best bang for your buck. So they go in trays. They are covered to keep insects, not insects, but rodents out, and even birds. We have to, in some cases, get it so they don't go down there. Honest to God. And I have to get the mesh small enough because I've seen those little rascally squirrels stick their arm down through the wire and start messing around and pulling things out. So you really have to be smarter than a rodent to get it done.
But they can be snowed on, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It would get normally what nature would do for it
Right.
anyway. So,
Right.
yeah, you're just the midwife, that's all.
Aw.
Jill asked that you not use bird netting to cover seeds or use in your garden because birds and other critters get caught in it and become entangled or die.
They absolutely,
Exactly right.
absolutely
Yeah.
do. I was on a walk once and a bird was caught in it. Someone had it on their and their area to hold the grass, the new grass in place. Anyway, we couldn't get it loose, so I had to go home, come back with some little scissors and cut it loose. It is
Oh my
horrible stuff. And I've seen snakes caught up in it too. So no, absolutely none of that stuff. They shouldn't sell that stuff really, except for orchards where they monitor it all the time. Now yeah, don't use that stuff. Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah.
Jenny mentions that the Clifton Institute has just received a grant to start growing native seeds so that a native seed industry can be launched in Virginia. Thanks,
That's
Jenny.
That's right. That's wonderful. Yeah. I think the NPS is going to be a part of that. That's wonderful.
Jill asked, do you store the seeds outside in the envelopes until you sow in January or February?
No, because that starts that cold stratification, and I want them in place. I want them in place when I do that. So I just keep them in my unheated workspace downstairs. It's not cold, it's not hot. I get my seeds prepared, then I take them outside, and then I see that as the time when I start the cold period, when I take them outside. I don't want to do that till I'm ready to do all of them at one time because I want everything to be happening at the same time. So you can do partial things if you're just going to monitor them. For me, it's a lot easier to do everything at the same time. So I don't refrigerate anything. You can refrigerate. Now, this is it. If you decide to refrigerate your seeds after you've cleaned them and they're ready to go, then you don't have to put them out in January and February because they've already suffered. They've already gone through that. So you would do is get them out when spring starts, when the weather is, in the 50s or so forth. You can start putting your seed trays out then. They've already gotten that cold period. And then again, cover them up because, they'll be dug into though. So yes, you can choose that option to keep them chilled inside and then put them out in spring to germinate. That's fine.
Jill mentions that Earth Sangha and the VNPS propagation bed are a great place for purchasing plants. And then you have the parent plants, so you can grow your own seed.
Right.
Yes, and that's what we collect throughout our season. And in fact, I need to go back in the next couple of weeks to get seeds that were blooming until we stopped in October. They just started to Aster patens, only blooms way at the end of the season. Beautiful plant, almost like a woody, almost a woody plant because it stays up all the time. And I can't get seeds from that until December probably. So. That's again, it's like a year-round thing when you can get them. But you have to remember to do that because otherwise, they're asters and the birds will come in and they'll get the seeds and bye-bye this year. I have to do it next year. So make a note in your calendar when you want to do something like that.
Dan Park mentions that there are native seed and plant swap groups in Facebook. Virginia Native Plant Swap is one he or she recommends.
I don't do Facebook.
I don't either. So, yeah.
I put the link in the chat.
Right. That's a great resource, I'm sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I think that's wonderful when people know the seeds they're looking for and they're native seeds. And if we have them in our beds, all we need to do is meet you over there and show you where they are, and you can gather some up if they're not already gone. We try to get them when they're ready so that we make sure that we beat the birds to them. Basically, it's a big industry over there for birds. I don't know if they sell them on the sign or not, but they sure do pick them clean.
Tamara has a question on seed collection. She has common and sensitive partridge pea plants. Once they begin popping open and spraying seeds, is it okay for her to collect brown pods that have not yet opened?
Yes, I have a bag of them. Yeah. And in fact, it won't take long for those seed pods to open up. So I've got a bag of the seeds already. But you get them, or if you don't, they pop open and they're all over the sidewalk. And they will. They're great. They'll germinate and they're wonderful plants. But I do try to grab some of mine so that I have ability to share them. Rather than digging through the soil trying to get them out from where rain has taken them all the way down to the driveway. Yeah, you got to get those quickly because you just never know when they're about to pop. So I think it's a fabulous plant. I just love them. The insects love them. The ants love them. The bumblebees love them. You know, on the partridge pea, it has little nectaries all up and down the stem. And as much research as I've done, I've not really figured out what the attraction is. But my guess is, and I've only seen it alluded to once, is that the ants are brought in to patrol that plant and protect it. And every time it goes out a different stem, there's a little nectar there, and it has a little, just a sip. That's all it is. It's tiny, and it goes around the entire plant, and it gets these sips. And that's enough, I think, to distract an insect that's in there too, that has bad motives. But the ants are crawling up and down it all the time. And in the bumblebees, some will stop in there too, because that plant really is a pollen plant, not a nectar plant, except for the little nectaries that are there.
What service does the ant provide to the plant?
It's patrolling.
For what? What does it do?
It's keeping insects off of it.
Oh.
They emit formic acid. And
Right. Okay.
But I've seen wasps at the extra floral nectaries on those also.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. Joanne says she has lots of goldfinches and they eat seeds and spread some. And each spring there are seedlings coming up in the soil in the stone walk path in her backyard.
That's great. That's great. The bird is sharing. I've got a lot of goldfinch too, and they're all over the seeds right now. So it's always fun. I would never use the seeds, all the seeds that I've got that are coming out of my yard right now, from the asters, the goldenrods, and they're just it's amazing. And there are a lot of birds, and this is why people can just forfeit a small portion of their lawn and put in some of these plants, because if everyone just did that a little bit, we'd have so many more birds because the resources would be there for them. So it's really I'm hopeful that I'm setting an example on my street, but mostly people go by and go, "Oh my God." And I go, "Yeah, I did it all myself." Whatever.
Eden asks, can you recommend a ground cover like thyme or a low-growing plant that I can use instead of grass?
Oh, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. There's
lilac sage.
Lilac sage is a wonderful one. I got it in the middle of my driveway, and that's good for spring pollinators, but also the birds like to eat the seeds on it. That's evergreen. Some of the sedums are evergreen. What
about pussy toes?
Pussy toes. There's two pussy toes. Both of those are evergreen.
Carex.
Carex are beautiful. Sedges. I've got some native carex in my yard, sedges, that are there naturally, and they're clump forming, and they're absolutely beautiful. And those spaced with all of the other ones makes a really, really interesting sort of tapestry of ground covers in an area where you thought would just be ugly, but it's stunning. So there are lots and lots of evergreen plants, and I wouldn't suggest golden ragwort because while it's very effective on a hillside and it's evergreen, it's got great flowers in the spring for the early pollinators. It does tend to take over, and nothing else really squeezes in between them. So that would be for severe cases. I do still have some along the fence line or whatever, and I love to see them in the spring, and they do. They are evergreen, and they are good ground cover.
I think the expectation of a ground cover is similar to what people see in lawns, and this sort of homogeneous, whatever you call it.
Right. The look of turf.
Right, the look of turf. So everything, it's just the same. Whereas when you have the ground covers, sometimes you'll have a patch of this and a patch of that. And
then they work together. Green and gold is what comes up.
Yeah. So it's a lot of it has to do with your expectations. As long as you don't expect it to be like a rug or carpeting or turf, if you can be flexible about it, you can come up with some really interesting, solutions, alternatives.
Thanks. Sylvia asks, do you cover the seeds with soil when you plant them or just on the surface?
The rule of thumb is you kind of get an eyeball on what the seed is, and then you put it down below that, at least that far down into the soil.
So you can
So
sprinkle
if it's
soil.
half an inch, then you
Mhm.
put it down half an inch, and I mean, covered half an inch. So it depends on the size of the seed. Some of them are very, very small, like dust. And that way you would just put, in fact, a lot of times I do is I just get the composted leaf mold and I put that over the top with a little bit of soil with it, just to give it some cover. So if the rain hits it, it doesn't splash out of its place.
A little sand, maybe.
A little sand would work too. Yeah.
Thanks so much. I think that's all the questions, and you've been very patient with all the questions, and I've learned a lot from both your presentation and the questions.
And they were great questions. That's a great
Yes.
crew. Thank you.